Hi everybody, Michelle McClunan, astrologer and life navigator, and I'm bringing you an astrology update for the full moon, which is happening on the 21st of July. It places a lot of emphasis on the sign of Capricorn, as well as on the ruler of Capricorn, which is Saturn. So I'm going to speak to you a little bit about this today because Saturn is a very important component in our journeys, in our lives, and obviously in our personal charts, as well as in the collective. So basically looking at the full moon, we see that the full moon obviously is when it's in Capricorn, it's opposite the sun in Cancer. So we still have a lot of the Cancerian energy around. You may have been feeling more emotional than normal over the last couple of weeks. You might have been feeling things coming up from your childhood, things coming up around home, security, money, that sense of safety, sense of nurturing or not, the sense of protection or not. So those might have been themes and might still be themes coming up for you as we close the end of the Cancer season. So if you look at the full moon, we have both of the sun and the moon at 29 degrees. The sun is at 29 degrees of Cancer, the moon is at 29 degrees of Capricorn. 29 degrees in any sign is what we call an anaretic degree, which is a critical, crucial degree because it's the ending of a cycle. In addition to these two being at 29 degrees, we also have Neptune, which is also at 29 degrees of Pisces, which is ending out a 165-year cycle. So things that might be coming up for you right now might be related to this life and might not be. They might be related to other journeys that you've had. But it's deeply karmic, whatever's going on for you and whatever's going on our planet as well. So if you unpack the sun and the moon, just the sun and the moon, and not look at anything else, right next to the moon, just to make things a little bit more exciting, we have Pluto, which has just recently entered into Aquarius, which I've been speaking about, and is now going backwards. So it doesn't actually go backwards, but from our perspective, it looks like it's going backwards. So we call it the retrograde cycle. And at the moment, we have 3 planets retrograde. We have Saturn, which I'm going to discuss, Neptune, and Pluto, all going retrograde. So what we actually have is Pluto going retrograde, going back to its place at 29 degrees of Capricorn and it's moving towards the moon, which is at 29 degrees of Capricorn. So it's what we call an applying conjunction. They're coming together, okay? So they're very, very close together. The moon and Pluto, opposite the sun in Cancer. And then it's also interacting with other planets, but I'll just stick with those for the time being. So what does that mean? Well, Pluto, whenever Pluto is connected with anything in astrology, it intensifies it. It's the planet of transformation. It's the planet which drills down, particularly when it's retrograde, it drills down and goes deeper and unearths whatever needs to be unearthed so that it actually can be cleared and healed and you can be transformed. So that's the energy of Pluto. So when Pluto is conjunct the moon, which it's actually moving towards right now, it's more intense, it's more deep, and there will be a lot more exposure of secrets in our world, on our globe. I think following the attempted assassination on Donald Trump, I think a lot of stuff's going to change politically, maybe economically as well. And a lot of things that weren't seen before are coming to light. Incidentally, that assassination attempt was very, very clearly seen in Donald Trump's chart, and mundane astrologers who keep an eye on leaders and politics and countries, many of them saw something particularly potentially very dangerous for the man. So that's very evident in astrology. So it's very good to look at things like that so that you can actually see how astrology works, how it interacts with your chart. What we have in astrology is you have your own birth chart, which is the wheel, which if you've had your chart done, you'll know that. And that gives you a little snapshot of the heavens when you were born. And then in constant motion around that birth chart, you've got planets moving around, interacting with the birth chart. So if you have anything at the same degree as a major transit, you would feel it more than somebody who didn't have something at the major degree. So in Donald Trump's case, his midheaven, which was his statesmanship, his position out there in the world, was activated by the Uranus-Mars transit that we've been having, which can be violence. It's not always the case, but it can be. So in our own charts, we always look to see where a full moon is interacting with our charts, if we've got our own charts. But more importantly, we look at the long cycles. So we look at the cycles of, for example, Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, because they hang around a lot. The moon comes and the moon goes, and the sun comes and the sun goes. It moves a degree a day. The moon moves right around the circle in 1 month. So when we look at something like Saturn takes 29 to 30 years to go around. So always when we have an activation by Saturn, it's longer lasting. So when we look at the full moon, we've obviously got the moon in a conjunction with Pluto, as I've said, which is more intense, which is very transformative, which asks us to feel what we need to feel, to let go of those parts of ourselves that are not working anymore, possibly even to grieve those parts of us that we're leaving behind. Because very much like the caterpillar that goes into the cocoon and comes out of a butterfly, in the process there's a dissolution, and that's a transformation. And many, 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 many people are experiencing that right now. Now when we bring it to another part of this, Pluto is at, obviously, as I say, it's moving towards back into Capricorn for its final little stint, a little short stint in Capricorn before it moves forward into Aquarius for the next 20 years. So when Pluto revisits Capricorn, it revisits themes related to the ruler of Capricorn, which is Saturn. So once again, it brings Saturn into the equation and the Saturn cycle. So this feels to me, with Pluto at 29 degrees, the full moon at 29 degrees, Neptune at 29 degrees, this is very much like an end of a phase, the end of a cycle, a little bit like a death before a rebirth. And as we face any kind of death, there's always that sense of uncertainty. And as I said, there can be grieving for something which is dying and you're not quite sure what is being reborn. The beauty is that something will definitely be reborn because it has to, because it's a cycle. So that's just on the alignment with Pluto and the moon. And obviously Pluto is opposite the sun. So there's immense ability here to go to another level, another layer of our soul's development, to let go of what we no longer need, and to envision a new purpose for ourselves, to envision a new way of being, and to move towards that with a lot of responsibility. So if we look at the ruler of this full moon, which is Saturn, which is the ruler of Capricorn, Saturn is a very interesting planet. We see Saturn as the teacher planet. We see Saturn as father time. It's almost kind of the father figure, the inner critic. Saturn rules what we're fearful of, where we might sabotage ourselves, and most importantly, how we grow, how we take responsibility, and how we move into adulthood. So the Saturn cycle, 29 years or so, is broken up into roughly 7 or 8 year cycles. So you've got the age of 7, 14, 21, 28, or 29, which is when you first become an adult. And then that cycle repeats again. So when you look at Saturn now, Saturn is retrograde. So it means that it's going backwards through the sign of Pisces. It's been in the sign of Pisces since March last year. So we've all been experiencing the Saturn in Pisces themes for the past year or so. What are the themes? Well, Saturn kind of insists that we face our responsibilities, that we take responsibility for everything that's showing up in our lives, even the difficulties, and that we don't blame anybody else or anything else for what has gone wrong or right in our lives. Because we have chosen this as a soul's journey. Saturn is very connected to past lives and very connected to our karma, And very often when we're going through something that we can't understand, we could say that it might be some kind of karmic balancing that we're busy with, and some kind of clearing as well. All of it designed to help us to move further into the truth of who we really are. So Saturn retrograde, when Saturn goes retrograde, like any other planets, so you've got Pluto going retrograde right now, it drills down. Saturn going retrograde, it drills down. It says, okay, reflect, relook, restructure, look at what the patterns are, revisit, actually, in a way. That's the retrograde energy. And so Saturn is saying to us, re-look at our illusions. Saturn in Pisces particular is going to show us where our illusions have been. And that could be an illusion about how our lives should look, the fantasy kind of vision that we've had for our lives, and the disappointment maybe that it hasn't lived up to that. But also at the same time, the maturity in seeing that, maybe it hasn't looked like that, but what have I got? What am I doing? How have I grown? What are my skills now? Have I grown in wisdom? Am I growing in wisdom? Am I facing my responsibilities, whatever those may be? Where do I sabotage myself? Saturn will often make us look at our commitments. Are we overcommitting or undercommitting? Our responsibilities. Are we not taking responsibility for our feelings, for our choices? Are we projecting that out onto someone else? Or are we taking too much responsibility for other people's choices? And so this is a kind of a reassessment time to just look at that. If you see yourself taking responsibility for someone else's issues, just see what that means about you, what that says about you, how that might be mirroring something. Maybe it's more important that you take more responsibility of your own issues and not try to fix everybody else out there, because that's one of the ways we avoid our own issues. Saturn is a serious planet, which is quite why this is a little bit serious, and it's actually going into, well, it's in its final part of its cycle, because Pisces is always the end of a Saturn cycle, of any cycle. When a planet moves through the sign of Pisces, it's the end of a cycle. And because that cycle, Saturn cycle in Pisces, takes 29 to 30 years, this is the end of a 29 to 30 year cycle. If you have had your chart done, you might be able to work that out. If you haven't, then it's always a good idea to have a reading. I am available for readings if you like to book one and see where this Pisces in Saturn in Pisces cycle is playing out for you. So for example, if Saturn is in Pisces and moving through the fourth house, for example, the fourth house is the house of the home, security, the actual house that you live in, your sense of stability, your sense of security. If it's moving through that house, you might find that you are building, renovating, moving, changing, shifting. If it's moving through your seventh house, you might find that you're restructuring, relooking, reflecting on your relationships. If it's going through your, for example, your 10th house of career, it could be that you're restructuring how you go out there in the world, what you do for a business, how you shine your light out there in the world. If it's the second house, it might be you're relooking at your finances and seeing how you can bring balance there and bring maturity there and bring responsibility there. So that's how that cycle works. So have a look to see. This one is sort of in the mid degrees of Pisces. So that will be where it's active now in your chart, and it'll be going backwards until November, and then it'll start going forwards again as it starts to go towards its finishing its journey in Pisces. So that's a little bit about Saturn, which is the ruler of this full moon. And you might be feeling it. I know a lot of people are feeling a huge sense of responsibility, a lot of really big feelings coming up. And if you aren't feeling that, that's wonderful. Then you can actually help other people that might be feeling that sense of lostness, that sense of not knowing where they're going, a sense of insecurity, There are people out there that are not being triggered the same way and that might be sailing through this. And if you're one of those people, you can hold space for someone who isn't managing as well or is battling a little bit. I think this is also a time to really stay away from focusing on the weaknesses and the mistakes, the perceived mistakes that you've made, and to see everything that's happened in your life as happening for a reason, because it's supposed to happen. Astrology is an amazing proof of that for me on a daily basis, that there are no mistakes, that everything is okay. Everything is supposed to be happening. Even if you're in dire straits, you have to know that this is part of the journey that you selected to work with in this life. And that in itself gives you a sense of relief, because so often we get into the blame, shame and blame game of, if I hadn't done this, then this would happen. If I had done this, then this wouldn't be happening. And that doesn't serve us. So Saturn, being the ruler of time, says come into reality. And the only reality that we have is this moment. So the more we can bring ourselves into this moment, the more we can soften into this moment and stop resisting what is, the less we're going to be in struggle. And that's a choice that we make. We can be in struggle and resist everything, or we can say, this is happening. How can I deal with this in the most mature way that I know how? That could be stepping away from an interaction which you can feel is heating up. In this case, we still have Mars and Uranus, very fiery combination in Taurus, and there is a lot of fire around. So I would say, if you are going to engage in any kind of difficult conversation, be sure to really settle yourself, ground yourself, take a few deep, deep, deep breaths beforehand so that you can avoid it from turning into conflict. Because that's most definitely still around, but we have tools to deal with this stuff. So the softer that we can be in terms of the more flexible and the more grounded and rooted that we can be in our own being is going to determine how we process the remainder of this full moon cycle, as well as the remainder of these cycles that are busy ending. So in order for something new to be born, so let's just look at the new earth, in order for something new to be born, something old has to leave. And so don't see, if something is leaving your life, don't see it as wrong. See it as, this needs to leave. Okay, so be it. It leaves. It is as it is. It's not a mistake. If something is coming up for you, difficulties in a relationship, in a job, in your finances, see if you can accept, acknowledge, and step into your sense of responsibility in order to move through it. Taking full responsibility and not projecting it onto somebody else. The biggest thing with this is to take responsibility for our own lives and not project it onto somebody else when they're not going the way we perceive that they should go, which might be the illusion. And that's what Saturn has come to show us. When Saturn first moved into Pisces last year, there was an analogy that I gave, which is, if you can imagine, I mean, I'm old enough to remember them, but a nightclub, a disco, that you're in a disco and it's beautiful and it's lovely music and the lights are down and everybody's looking beautiful. There's some ultraviolet lights going on. Everybody's teeth are white. And all of a sudden, somebody switches the neon light on and you actually see it for what it is. So Saturn in Pisces is, first of all, helping us to see this reality, which is, you know, this person, this room, this house, this moment in physical form. But it's also, because it's in Pisces, which is the sign of spirit, it's the sign of flow, it's the sign that's very connected with the divine. It's also showing us what's real, what's truly real. And so we are being urged to really empower ourselves by really focusing on our spiritual growth and taking full responsibility for that part of our lives. And in a way, although this all feels very real, it's not actually that real, because everything in the reality, in the real world that we know of is in a transitory state. Everything is shifting all the time. So the things that we see as real and lasting and structured are all eventually one day going to collapse. So then it brings you back to, well, what is real? And that's what Saturn in Pisces says. What is real? So if you look at a home, for example, you think, okay, the home is the physical walls. But what is even more real than that? It's your inner home. It's the home that you take wherever you go. Doesn't matter where you are. That's real. So Saturn is saying, look at what is actually real. And that's really, if you look at it, it's not the manifest world. That's not that real, because that changes all the time. So, having said all of that, if intolerance is coming up for you, where other people might not be perceived to be pulling their weight, or anything like that, just see where it's resonating with you. So and-so is not pulling his or her weight. Okay, where am I not pulling my weight? Where am I not showing up for myself? Where am I not showing up for other people? Where am I blaming other people? So it's just to take full responsibility for our own journey, and in so doing, to align ourselves with a new purpose. We are moving into a new earth. It's a slow process, because a lot is still dying off. And that's what we're in at the moment. We're in the dying off process. But at the same time, there's this potential for a very beautiful new beginning. So we are running our next Journey to Freedom course, which starts on Thursday this week, on the 18th of July. We're starting with a free week. It's a free week's workshop, which is called Finding New Purpose. Because as we move through this shift on our planet, we need to be approaching life in a new way. So if you'd like to join us, you're very welcome to join us just for the week. You don't have to join for the full journey. But it's also the introductory week for our longer journey, which is 13 weeks long. But this week, the Finding Purpose week, we're going to be looking at the outer purpose and the inner purpose, and how we can align more with our purpose, with the reason why we are here at the moment, or the reason why we came onto the planet. How we can individually align with that, because each of us is part of this beautiful, beautiful tapestry, and without us there would be a thread missing. So never see that you're unimportant. You're very, very important for this journey of all of us. If you took one little thing out, the whole picture changes. So how can you show up in your truth and your authenticity and your beauty, and look at your attributes and not only your failings? I think that's a really important theme. As this energy builds to the full moon and for the next month. So if you'd like to join us for that, you can visit our website, journeysofawakening.com. I put the link in the description below, and you can join us very quickly. Just register and we'll send you the information. And our first Zoom call is on Thursday evening at 7 o'clock South African time. If you can join us live, that would be great. If you live in another part of the world and that's not possible, there will be a recording, and there's a lot of material that you get as part of the free week. You get a journal, a creative exercise, meditations, a teaching video. So you get quite a lot of value just for the free week as well. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so. That does help me to get the word out, and like the video, and please comment on the video as well, because that helps me to grow the channel and get the word out even more. So I'd appreciate that. If you'd like a reading, you're welcome to contact me to set that up. I have got a couple of weeks delay, but we can find a time slot for you. I did pull a card for this full moon because it's a big one. This reading is a little bit longer because we've gone into a little bit more detail, but hopefully it's been helpful. The card that I drew was Imagine, which is, I think, really beautiful. Immediately it springs to mind Imagine, the song by John Lennon. And if you just see us and where we are on the planet at the moment, in context to what he was saying in that song. Maybe just give it another play and listen to the words. It's very apt for where we are right now. Imagine. This card comes out of the Wisdom of Oracle pack by Colette Baron-Reid. And the card is, the essential meanings of the card is turning imagination into manifestation, creative thought, visualization, the power of aligning imagery and feelings, creativity and illusions. So it's quite apt. The message, who do you want to be? What do you need to believe in order to have the life you want? You were gifted with the power to imagine. If you can dream it, you can create it. This is the time when your imagination is the key to manifesting the life you desire. Spend time daydreaming, fashioning a vision board to help you see your goals, or meditating. Allow the power of your creativity to deliver images of what feeds your soul. Then allow your feelings to mingle with your inspirations and imagine these things being real right now. Then repeat. What you imagine will become your belief, and soon you will see these things come to pass in the outer world as if by magic. And then there's a little bit at the end, I'm not going to read the whole thing, which is called the protection message in this pack, which I think is also quite valid, especially for the Saturn context. Illusions and wishful thinking, rooted in a sense of lack, may have entered your life. Now may be the time to see things as they truly are, and not as you hoped or imagined they would be. Release fear, then envision anew. Perhaps you're anticipating that something fearful might happen and recreating that image of disaster over and over in your mind. The universe responds to such projections, so be aware of this catastrophizing. No matter what, illusions and awfulizing, I love that word, are a misuse of imagination. Clear the inner slate and stay grounded, stay real. Only then can you truly have what you need and desire. So I think that's a lovely way of looking at the Saturn retrograde cycle as well as the full moon. I hope that's helped you, and I hope that it helps you going forward. Just remember this week, breathe. Take time to just step back. If you feel like you're going to react, lean back, soften, breathe. Something that another astrologer, Pam Gregory, said, which I find very helpful, is as you're walking, as you're talking, as you wake up in the middle of the night, to repeat to yourself, I'm breathing in love and I'm breathing out love. Try that. Try that a few times. It has a very softening effect, I find. And I find that by doing that, it takes me out of rigidity and out of fear. Because only love is real. When you really look at it, love is real. So try that. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. And if you like this, please share it. Thank you.